As you can see, I did World War II, also known as the Good War. So, World War II started on September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland because Germany believed that Poland was sabotaging Germany. Throughout the war, it was fought all over the world: Russia, Europe, Africa, Asia, Middle East, Scandinavian countries, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea. And the main figures were, main figures were, this is a hard one, Hideki Tojo, Benito Mussolini, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Winston Churchill, Dwight D. Eisenhower, George Patton, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Harry Truman. The origins of the war, a little tricky. The Treaty of Versailles had many parts that would prevent Germany from starting another war, such as the War Guilt Clause. This made Germany accept the blame for starting the First World War. Reparations: Germany had to pay £6,600 for damages. Disarmament: Germany was only allowed one small army in order to defend themselves. Also, the land that Germany had taken from other countries during the First World War was divvied up and distributed to other countries. And also, Hitler's actions were what led up to the war. Once he was elected Chancellor of Germany, he began building up a secret army. Bless you. He began building up a secret army, which was against what the treaty said. They were only allowed a small army, but he was building a large one. Even though he thought it was secret, Britain and France knew about it, but they thought that that Germany would help them in the fight against communism, so they didn't pay much attention to it. They later found out that they were not helping the fight against communism. Germany marched into Rhineland, and at the time the army was weak and could have easily been defeated, but France and Britain did not want to start a war, so they decided to stay out of it. But after the invasion of Poland, that's when France and Great Britain decided to step in. Now, the Axis powers were Tojo, Mussolini, and Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was the leader of the Nazi Party in Nazi Germany. He was born in Austria on April 20th, 1889. Due to the Great Depression that Germany was in because of World War I, Germany was desperate for a leader and were willing to become more open to extremist options. Once he was elected Chancellor of Germany, he was able to take full control of Germany. Hitler was later named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. So he had a pretty heavy influence on what was going on, and it was kind of a big deal that this horrible person was named Man of the Year. Next we have Benito Mussolini. He created the Fascist Party in Italy, making himself dictator before World War II. He was dictator of Italy. To show off how strong how strong his regime was, he invaded Ethiopia. The Ethiopians stood no chance against Italy's modern technology. They had modern weapons, oil-powered tanks and stuff, so Ethiopians kind of they weren't going to do well from the start. And it was kind of like an unfair fight. So he did that, and also during this civil war in Spain, Benito sent support to the fascists, and all of this caught the attention of Hitler, and Italy's military success got the attention of Adolf Hitler, and the two countries signed an alliance called the Pact of Steel. The allies of the war were Dwight D. Eisenhower, George Patton, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin. Dwight D. Eisenhower was born on October 14, 1890, and in 1945 he became the U.S. Army Chief of Staff and was the first Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. He commanded the troops during the D-Day invasion, and after the invasion he was promoted to a 5-star general. And George Patton, second guy to your left or right, whatever, which one. He was born November 11, 1885, and was known as the most successful combat general in U.S. history. He was granted command of the Third Army during Operation Overlord, which is also D-Day. We'll get to that. Over the course of the 10-day march, Patton and the Third Army were able to capture 10,000 square miles of German territory. Winston Churchill, he was born November 30th, 1874. He was the British Prime Minister during the war and was able to lead them from near defeat. On the day that Britain declared war on Germany, he became the first Lord of the Admiralty and became a member of the War Cabinet. Joseph Stalin ruled the Soviet Union for more than 20 years. During this time, he modernized Russia and helped defeat Hitler's army. He was born December 18, 1897. He was the General Secretary of the Communist Party and became a Soviet dictator after Vladimir Lenin's death. So, major events of the war. Pearl Harbor, pretty big event. Hitler betrayed Stalin. That was pretty big. Stalin was originally part of the Axis power, and after Hitler betrayed him and invaded the Soviet Union, he decided to join the Allied forces and fight against Hitler. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that was a major event. And the Holocaust, that was an event that took place throughout the war, pretty much. Pearl Harbor was kind of where the U.S. decided to finally step in, and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was kind of the end of the war. So Pearl Harbor took place on December 7, 1941. The attack started at around 8 a.m. Pearl Harbor is located in Hawaii near Honolulu, and during the attack that lasted 2 hours, they destroyed 20 American naval ships, 200 airplanes, killed 2,000 American soldiers and civilians, and were able to wound about 1,000 more. The day after Pearl Harbor, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war on the Empire of Japan, and 3 days after declaring war on Japan, Japan allied with Germany and Italy. So because of that, the U.S. then had to, because of that, Italy and Germany declared war on the United States for declaring war on Japan. The U.S. and Japan had been very close to going to war throughout the years, but Pearl Harbor was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was kind of like, you attacked us, and now we're going to war. Before Pearl Harbor, because of the tension, the U.S. had stopped trading with Japan for many reasons, one of them being the rape of Nanking, and it was Pearl Harbor for you. It's pretty bad, horrible. This is just a picture of a few of the ships, huge plumes of smoke. Horrible attack. It was a surprise attack that no one really saw coming. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On August 6, 1945, the first of two B-29 bombers named the Enola Gay flies over Japan en route to Hiroshima and drops the world's first atomic bomb called Little Boy, a 9,000-pound uranium-235 bomb that would produce a 12 to 15 kiloton blast. This attack devastated the city of Hiroshima destroying 90% of the city and killing 80,000 people, and tens of thousands of people died later due to radiation exposure. Then again, on August 9th, another B-29 named Boxcar flies towards the city of Nagasaki, where the U.S. dropped another atomic bomb that was named Fat Man, a 10,000-pound uranium-253 bomb that produced a 22-kiloton blast. Fat Man was not as effective as it should have been because of the geography of Nagasaki. It laid in a valley, so the blast was significantly reduced. But I think it was another 70,000 people were killed at Nagasaki. Or sorry, 40,000. So right there. And the days between the two attacks, the U.S. was waiting for Japan to surrender. But after not hearing from them in a few days, actually the Emperor of Japan said that they wouldn't give up. And after the second bombing, they decided on August 15th that it was time to surrender. Just a warning, this is the pretty bad stuff, pretty graphic. This man these people are the same person. He survived, but as you can see, it was pretty horrible for him.
Hiroshima?
Yeah, the four pictures up there are the two cities before and after. As you can see, there's an obvious city, and then it just looks like there's absolutely nothing below. Pretty horrific. As I was looking for pictures and doing my research, the blasts were just so intense that there are permanent shadows on some of the walls because of the initial flash. Pretty bad stuff. These were the first and second and only atomic bombs that have ever been used, in an attack. So, and this was the event that pretty much ended the war. The Holocaust. The Holocaust was a systematic killing of 11 million European Jews, along with blacks, gypsies, and homosexuals by the Nazi Party. Hitler believed that the Jews were an inferior race and a threat to Germany. The Holocaust was Hitler's final solution to Germany's problem. The first concentration camps were reserved for communists and social democrats. The first concentration camps opened before World War II started, when Hitler was coming to power, and he would, anyone who disagreed with him, he kind of just put there. They were kind of just prisons. They weren't really the killing grounds. The concentration camps were then later became the killing grounds of the Holocaust. In July 1933, concentration camps held 27,000 people. In September 1939, after gaining control of western Poland, the German police forced Polish Jews out of their homes into ghettos. Later in 1939, Nazi officials began selecting German civilians with mental illnesses and disabilities to be gassed to death in the euthanasia program. In 1941, as the German Empire was expanding, the Jews from all over the continent were being transported to the Polish ghettos. However, during the invasion of the Soviet Union, it really showed how brutal the Nazis could be in killing Jews. They had mobile killing units. That's what the English translation was. They were called Einsatzgruppen, and they specialized in killing Jews on the go, and they killed over 500,000 Soviet Jews. On July 31st, 1941 was the beginning of the Endlagerung, the final solution, where all the Jews were marked with a yellow star designating them as open targets. At this time, the Germans were also began transporting groups from the ghettos to the concentration camps. The groups consisted of the least useful, the sick, old and weak, and the very young. These were the first mass gassings, which took place at the camp of Belzec. And throughout the war, 5 more camps were built for those mass gassings in Poland. I'm going to try and pronounce them as best I can. Kalimno, Sobibor, Treblinka, Majdanek, and Auschwitz, which was the biggest and, I guess, most famous one. At these camps, the prisoners were killed by gassing firing squads. They were worked to death, and some of them were selected for medical experiments, so try and better the Nazi soldiers. They would just experiment on them, trying to figure out a way to make a superhuman or something. And it was just terrible, terrible stuff. Again, the next pictures are going to be pretty bad. As you can see, it was just horrible stuff. They just didn't care about who they were killing. They just piled up the dead bodies. And here they're just burning the they just had giant ovens where they would burn people and their bodies. And this is what some of the survivors of concentration camps would look like. It's incredible that they even survived, in the just the way he is. It's just absolutely horrible stuff. Horrible, horrible stuff. And the main battles, Battle of France. The Battle of France was the initial takeover by the Nazis, taking over France. Operation Overlord, or D-Day, was the invasion of Normandy, which was the final. It was moving all the troops, actually getting them onto continental Europe, and pushing through Europe to get to Germany, which eventually ended the war. The Battle of Midway Island is an island in the Pacific Ocean, the Pacific Islands, and it was a midway point, Midway Island, between the U.S. and Japan, and it was crucial that the U.S. had control of it, because taking Midway would actually put us in range for bombing Japan. And the Battle of the Coral Sea was the first aircraft versus aircraft carrier, aircraft carrier versus aircraft carrier battle. It was a pretty significant battle because the Japanese were planning on going to attack areas in Australia, and the U.S. intercepted their codes and had to trick the government into letting them attack because they didn't believe them at first. And that's about it.